Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, nursing students, for being part of our presentation. I'm Dr. Margie Aguilar, campus president here at the Northeast Campus. Today we have MDJ. I'll tell her to give you your full name because I can't remember it. She's from FirstLight Credit Union. We have a partnership with FirstLight, and we're fortunate that MDJ has partnered with us to give presentations to our students regarding financial literacy. We have 3 trainings a year, and we alternate between programs. You have a benefit today because you're here live, and so you won't have to do the Canvas assignment. So this presentation will be shown to all the students here at this location, and they will have to do an assignment on Canvas to answer some questions. So we ask that today you feel free to ask questions. We want it to be interactive. I have sat through all of her trainings, and I've learned a lot myself. She's going to talk about, all the things that affect us in our financial lives. So it's relevant to all of us. And so I ask that you just, hear her out. And if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to ask. She's also going to ask that you consider filling out a survey. She'll tell you a little bit more about that. It's optional. You don't have to do that. All right? Thank you so much, MDJ. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good. It's afternoon. I'm used to doing them in the morning, but good afternoon. I brought you guys some snacks, whoever's here. I hope you enjoyed them. And my full name, it's Maria de Jesus Ortiz-Frausto, but I go by MDJ. It's a lot easier to remember. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I work for FirstLight, and I'll tell you guys a little bit about FirstLight. We've been in business for over 65 years. It's actually going to be 70 years soon. We are located in El Paso, Fort Bliss, and Las Cruces. The nearest branch, if you guys live around the area, is going to be on Kenworthy, which is about 3 to 5 minutes away from here. Now, we do have 3 locations in Las Cruces, 7 of them here in El Paso, 2 branches in Fort Bliss, and we also have video banking. So if at any time you're not able to make it, I know sometimes with school, maybe you guys are here most of the day. If you have internships or anything like that, that you have to go after school, sometimes you're not able to make it in and ask questions or things like that. So we do have video banking as well, which is kind of just FaceTiming with a representative to get any of your questions answered. Now, today I'm here to talk to you about credit. Who knows about credit? Yes? No? Sort of? Okay, I'm going to test your knowledge, see how much you guys know. So what is credit? Who can tell me what you use credit for? To borrow money, to borrow stuff. Do we all have $50,000 right now in our account that we could go get a new vehicle? If you guys do, let me borrow some of it, so I could go buy something. How many of you have $250,000 to go buy a house? How many of you have, at least $25,000, to pay off, your education? Not really, right? Most of us either get financial aid, get loans. If you're going to buy a vehicle, you have to get a loan. If you're going to purchase a home, you need to get a mortgage. So for all of that, you need credit. Credit is the ability to borrow money from, under an agreement from someone else or an institution, specifically sometimes it's credit union, bank. Sometimes, depending on your situation, you go to those, the ones that are bi-weekly with your paycheck and things like that I don't recommend them, but we'll talk a little bit about that right now. Now, what's a credit report? Who can tell me what's a credit report?
It can tell you how many accounts you have open, or how many...
It could tell you how many accounts you have open, how many revolving accounts. So the easiest way that I can explain it, it's a grown-up report card. So it's a report card that you get, that once you're a grown-up. And for your grades, technically, what they're using is your payment history, how many accounts you have open, how many loans you have open. It'll have your information, your address, your name, where you work at, if you have student loans. So it'll state all of that information on the credit report. Is that information important? Yes. Why is it important? Keeping track of your debt, pretty much. So now, quick question when it comes on to borrowing money. So let's say, all of you are nursing students right here in this room. How many of you guys have a job as well? Okay, I see a couple of you. Now, those that have a job, okay, and the question is kind of for both of you, but I'll stick first with the ones that have a job. So your friend, the one that's next to you, they might not have a job, they're doing school. So they ask you for $20 because they forgot their lunch today. They're going to be here all day, and they're hungry. You get hungry if you're in school all day. So they ask to borrow $20. Do you lend them the money? Yeah. Yes, I hear some yeses. Some are doubtful. So they're good friends of yours, guys. Come on, you guys are all together in the nursing program. So you lend them the money, and they tell you, "I'm going to pay it to you next week." And you're like, "All right, that's fine. I get paid this week. You're good." 2 weeks pass by, and they don't pay you. Do you ask them for your money back? I heard some no's. But it's $20. And in 2 weeks, it's not payday for you, and you need money because you forgot your lunch at home. Do you ask them for your money? So you would, that's a good one. You would tell them, "Hey friend, you got me." So, a lot of the times you might ask for the money. It's your money. It's $20, a whole month passes by, they haven't paid you, and let's say you didn't ask them for the money. 2 months pass by, they still haven't paid you. Oh, but they have the new Stanley Cup, or they have the new, the newest trending cup that's out there. And they just got it. They just got it. And it's still, even if it's not a Stanley, it's still like $25. And then they tell you, "Hey, friend, can I borrow another 20? I forgot to bring my lunch again." Do you give them another 20? Probably not.
I wouldn't have given them the first 20.
You wouldn't have given them the first 20.
It's like $1.50. Not that. I don't need that back.
You see, so a lot of the times, if you already lend them once, and then they're asking you again, and you're like, "Well, you haven't even paid me the first 20 that I lent you. Like with this 20, if I lend it to you, it's going to be 40. So you remember, right, that they didn't pay you. Now, will you remember after a year that they didn't give you those 20 back? I hear some yeses. I hear some being doubtful. I've lent some of my friends money or coworkers, and I'm like, "Nah, like, we went to Whataburger, I paid for you, you haven't paid me back, not even brought me a coffee back." So you remember, that they didn't pay you back. And you're not going to lend them money because they didn't pay you back. So when it comes to your credit report, it will have your recent history on payments for 2 years. So it'll remember if you didn't give a payment in January. It'll remember if you were late in March. It'll remember if, for the whole year you were late, or for the whole year you didn't give payments or anything like that. So the credit report is kind of like us. It's going to show that payment history. Now, if you go and ask for a loan, and in the last 12 months you've been late on your payments, and if you go and ask for money, do you think they're going to lend you money? So it might be a no, it might be a yes. But if they do end up lending you money, sometimes the interest is going to be really high because you already have a history of paying late, specifically for the last 12 months. But would you guys lend that person money? And it's a maybe, maybe how much was it? What problems was that person having? Maybe they were out of the job during that whole time. So those are things that, when you go and borrow money, we try to ask you if we see anything like that on your credit report. But your credit report is very important because it's going to show all that history, and it's going to help you either get a better rate or, get a loan that is higher rather than something that is lower. Now, on here it does state that it has information on current and past credit accounts. So even if you paid off a loan, it'll still show on there. And like I mentioned, usually it'll show 2 years of history on there. Sometimes depending on how they pull it, when you do it for like a mortgage, it might have more history on there of payments that you have done or haven't done. Now, we've been asked before when it comes to like if they repo a vehicle or anything like that, that stays on there at least 7 years. So for 7 years, it'll say that they took your car. And do you think they'll want to, lend you money for another car? Probably not. Where do you guys see yourself in the next 7 years? Think about that. Hopefully at a good nursing job, maybe being a nursing manager, or for those of you that are watching on the recording, maybe a manager by that point. Maybe you'll have a house, hopefully. But what if you can't get a house because they repoed your vehicle? And it's still showing up on your report, right? So it's very important to look at our credit report and see what information is reporting on there. Now, on this one, it has how to access your free credit report. So you are entitled on getting a free credit report once per year. Okay, you can get it via mail, phone number, or through the web, and it'll go ahead and pull up your report. It's very important for you guys to check it. How many of you guys have looked at your credit report within the last year? Okay, a couple. Within the last 6 months? Within the last month? Okay, so we need to kind of get in the habit even of at least getting that credit report on a yearly basis to see what is getting reported and see what's on there. Because what if you weren't late in March and it's stating there that you were late in March? That's something that you can dispute because you paid on time. So little things like that can affect you in the long run if we don't pay attention to them and if we don't take care of it right away. So if you guys want to take a picture of that or anything like that, so you can pull your free credit report. Like I said, it's free. There's no charges on it, but so that you guys can take a look at it. Now, who could tell me what's a credit score? The grade on your credit report. So if I have a 200, is that a good score? Are they going to lend me money for a mortgage? The mortgage that I want a mansion. If I want a new Corvette, are they going to give me that with a 200 score? Probably not, right? So the scores, and it's giving you on here, it could start off as 300. There is, of course, if you're barely starting your credit, barely turned 18, anything like that, some people do have it at 0. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It's just that they haven't taken out anything under their name, and that's why it's at 0. So it starts at 300. 300 to 579, it's what is considered a poor score. But it doesn't mean that you can't get out of there. It can be fixed. 580 to 669, it's fair. 670 to 739 is good. 740 to 789 is very good, and then 800 to 850 is exceptional. Okay, so at what range do you think they're gonna give you the best interest rate? Exceptional, yeah, at the 800 to 850. Okay, so make sure you guys know your score. Do any of you know your current score? Yes. And I know some of us might have like Credit Karma that it shows you on there, but a lot of the times that score might be off 15 to 20 points. It just depends on the reporting then when you go and actually get your credit score pulled or anything like that. So just keep that in mind because, often we get people that are like, well, on, Credit Karma, it says I have an 800. And when we pull it, it's like a 750 or less, you know what I mean? So keep that in mind because not everything gets reported on Credit Karma. That's why it's important for you to pull your credit report and see more or less where you're at. Now, what's on your report? So, of course, personal identifiable information, your name, your address, where you're working at or where you're worked at. That's very important as well because sometimes a lot of people are like, it probably does say where I work and they don't check it. But we've had cases in which it's showing an employer that they've never worked at. So that might be a sign that somebody's using your information. So it's better to catch that on time as well, okay? The addresses, if you haven't lived at that address, that's something that you can go ahead and report for them to go ahead and remove it. Now, credit accounts, anything, like I said, credit cards, any loans that we've taken, anything like that will come out there. Credit inquiries. Anytime that they pull our credit report, it's going to show on there. And every time your credit report gets pulled, your score will go down a couple of points. So keep that in mind. If you go to Sephora and you're like, oh yeah, let me apply for the credit card because they're going to give you the 30%, that's an inquiry. If you go over to Dillard's and do the same thing, that's another inquiry. So the more places that you go and they're pulling your credit report, it's going to count as an inquiry. And on there, it stays as well for the last 2 years. So if you have, let's say, 20 inquiries of credit cards and then you try and apply for another credit card, they might question you about it on, like what's going on? How come you have so many inquiries for credit cards? Now, public record on collection items. So anytime that you default on a payment and it goes to collections, they will go ahead and report it. So usually what ends up happening is, let's say, that creditor sells your debt to another organization, they report it. If that organization sells your debt to another one, they're going to report it. So it might be the same debt, but it might show on there multiple times because they were selling it from organization to organization. So keep that in mind. Now, this is what your credit score is compromised of. So 35% of it is payment history. Okay? One late payment on your credit report can stay on there for 2 years. One late payment. Now, don't get scared. It's not like, oh, if I owe it today and I pay tomorrow, it's already going to be there. No. What is considered late is if you're 30 days or more late on that payment. Then that's when it gets reported. Now, a lot of the times, for example, with credit cards, they don't have a grace period. They tell you it's due on the 4th and it's due on the 4th. So it's one of those that they might report before the 30 days that you were late on it. Now, when it comes to personal loans, regular loans, they usually give you a grace period. Usually it's about 10 days, 5 to 10 days for you to make that payment. But one of the most important things, especially if you're thinking of being late on that, is contact them and let them know that you're going to be late. Because like that, they don't ding your report or anything like that on you being late. If you feel like you're going to be 30 days or more late, call them as well. See what you can do. Sometimes they might be able to defer the loan. They might be able to change the date that it's due so that it, better adjusts to when you're able to get it paid. But it's very important to call because if we don't say anything, they're not going to know. And we're going to think you're just ignoring us. It's going to be like, well, they're not answering. I mean, they must be okay. So don't be afraid of calling and letting, whether it be us or anywhere else that you have a loan that you're going to be late. Now, the next 30% is debt, how much you owe. So usually there is something that it's called debt to income. And we like to see it under 30%. So it's how much you're making compared to how much you owe. So I'll give you guys an example. I had someone that came into the branch and I was like, this is my unicorn member. She had an 850. First time I had ever seen an 850. And she wanted a new Escalade. And I was like, I met my long goal with this, I did it. And then I pull her credit report. Excellent payment history, had an 850 on her credit, but she had 10 vehicles on her report. And I was like, man, she has like a car for almost every day of the month. I was like, can I borrow a car? But her debt to income ratio was at about 150%. What that meant is that in payments, she was making 150% more than what she was getting as income. So do you guys think we would want to lend her more money for another car? No, right? Because what that was saying is that she had no money left over to pay utilities, to pay groceries, to pay any of that. Like all of her income and a half was going to pay debt that she already owed. So when I started asking her about the vehicles, I was like, well, whose vehicles are they? You know, and she said, oh, it's my son, my daughter-in-law, my sister, like everyone. It was, all the vehicles were somebody else's except for her. And she said, well, it's because I don't pay it, they pay it. But when you co-sign on someone or you're joined with someone on a loan, the responsibility falls under you as well. Because if that other person can't pay it, you're on that loan as well, so the responsibility of making that payment is yours. So keep that in mind anytime you guys, if any of you ask someone to co-sign for you or you co-sign for somebody else. Because once it's your turn to, you know, apply for something, that debt falls under your name and under your social, so it's still your responsibility to pay for it, even if that other person is the one paying for it. The same way goes if, let's say, you're joined or co-signed for a vehicle. So if that other person doesn't pay for it, and you're like, pues que se lo quiten, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not the one driving the car, they are. Let them take the car away. If you're joined or co-signed on it, it still falls under your responsibility. So on your credit report, it's still going to show as a repo. So keep that in mind when anybody asks you to co-sign. You know, we said right now, you know, even lending $20 to your friend was kind of iffy. So we're talking about something that's going to affect you in the future. Now, the next one, the credit length is 15%. So how long you've had certain accounts for. Okay, that's 15% of your score. That's why we always say, if it's your first credit card that you've gotten, that's the one that's going to have the longest payment history. So don't close that out. Like, try not to close that one out at all because it's the first credit card you got and it has the longest payment history on there. Now, the next one is new credit and types of credit, 10%. So we go back to the inquiries. So anytime you get a new credit account or anything like that, it's going to show on there. So it's an inquiry, so that affects your credit score. And then on types of credit, you know, if you have 10 credit cards, one car, and then let's say your mortgage. If you go and ask for another card, they might tell you no because you already have 10 other credit cards, you know. And then we look at the balance. You know, what balance do you have on your credit cards? That affects your debt to income ratio too. If you have a credit card of 500, you're only supposed to use 30% of it. So anytime you're going to apply for a credit card, you know, if you say, oh, I'm going to get it for $1,000, keep in mind that you shouldn't be using all the $1,000. You should only be using 30% of it. So anytime you're going to apply for a card, think of what you're going to use it for and do the 30% of it. Because once you go over 30%, it'll start affecting your credit score as well. It'll take a ding down. Now, this one is called the power of paying more. So I wanted to show you guys this one because this one's very important when we're paying for stuff. So usually when we take out credit cards, you know, especially right now, you know, for those of you that aren't working, that maybe have a credit card, you're like, let me give the minimum payment. Now, in this example, you have a credit card of $2,000. And if you only pay the minimum, which will probably be like $20, the interest you'll end up paying is $4,943, just on interest. So total would be $6,943, and it'll take you close to 30 years to pay it off. Where do you guys see yourself in 30 years? Retired? I heard retired. So in 30, I mean, it's kind of hard to see yourself in 30 years, right? Like, hopefully I have a house, a good car, you know, I'm ready to be getting retired by then. But imagine if you borrowed $2,000, only gave you the minimum, and it's going to take you that long to pay it off. And look at how much you're paying for interest. Close to $5,000. If I were to give you guys $5,000 right now, what can you do with it?
Go on vacation.
Go on vacation. I love that one. Right? And that's what you would be paying for interest. Just on interest. Now, if you power pay, let's say you do the 40, which would be technically almost double of it. Then on interest, it would be $1,904. And it'll take you about 8 years to pay it off. Can you visualize yourself a little bit more in 8 years, where you would be in 8 years? A little bit more, you know? Now, if you're a rock star and pay $10 extra, $10 extra, we're talking about monthly payment of $50. What do we do with $50 right now? Gas, groceries, new cups. I'm not saying anything about you girls. I have one myself, but you know, sometimes we purchase certain things that maybe they're not exactly a necessity. But if you pay it on the credit card, it takes you down to 5 years, paying off those $2,000 in 5 years. Now, let's say we pay $50 extra each month. It takes you down to 2 years and 3 months. Can you see yourself in 2 years, 3 months? And then if you pay $100 extra each month, on interest, you'll only pay $280. I mean, $280 is still a good amount of money that you could do something with it, right? But it's not as much as $4,943. And with that, it would only take you about a year, 4 months. When do you guys graduate? In about a year, 4 months. So see, you would be done with it when you're done with school. So think about that. I'm not saying not to spend. Ideally, I would love for all of you guys to save money, you know, and be able to pay for some other stuff as well. But you do need to borrow money in order to build up your credit and in order to be able to buy, you know, a car, a mortgage, anything like that. But it's about spending responsibly and paying responsibly as well. Because I'd rather you pay off those $2,000 in a year, 4 months, than wait 30 years when you're about to get retired, you know, and you're barely paying off the $2,000 that you borrowed. So keep that in mind. Now, I'm putting on here again the how to access your free credit report. It has the 3 bureaus as well that you can contact if you need to do any dispute when it comes to, you know, if something's wrong on your credit report. Now, on this next one, it's called the 5 C's of credit. And this is usually any time that you go and request a loan or anything like that. This is what they're going to take a look at. Character, capacity, cash flow, capital, conditions, and collateral. So, usually when it's a personal loan, is there collateral behind it? No, technically no, because we're just lending you the money. It's not something that we could take away from you. When it's a vehicle or it's a house, if you don't pay it back, they can, you know, take your vehicle or take your house. So collateral is very important with the amount that you're going to borrow. So if you've never borrowed, you know, money from an institution, you can't go in there and be like, oh, I need $50,000, you know, and they're going to be like, okay, what are you paying, you know? What are you going to use the money for? And just say like, oh, I'm going to, you know, remodel the house. But you've never borrowed any money, so, you know, we won't be sure if you're going to be able to repay that or not. Now, conditions. Conditions and character, capacity, cash flow. All those 3 kind of go a little hand in hand. You know, do you have the ability to repay that back? You know, have you had a steady job in the past, you know, 2 years or in the past couple of years? You guys have an advantage because you're in school. So as long as you went to school in the same thing that you're working, then they kind of count that as experience in a particular field. So if all of a sudden you take like a whole year, a gap year, and then, you know, you just started working, you have like 5 days that you started working, then they are going to question that. They're going to be like, well, you know, what happened for a whole year? How come you weren't working? Or what was going on? And then it's like, well, you've only been working 5 days at your current job. You know, go back and think about it like when it came to your friend. Because nothing against not working, but, you know, some of you doubted it because they're like, oh, well, they're not working, you know. How are they going to give me the 20 back? So think about that in general. So I know on the previous slide as well on doing the power pay, I did want to mention for those of you that have a mortgage, if you pay $100 more per month, usually it'll take off a year of what your loan term is. And it's the same thing with anything else, whether it be a personal loan or anything like that. If you're paying more than the minimum, it's going to take months or years away from the total amount of time that you were supposed to pay it. Questions? No? Do we all have great credit? Can we all go get a new car, a new mortgage? I'm like, I see some yeses. So it's very important, guys, just for you guys to know that information. And like I said, to use it on a day-to-day basis. Or think about when you're going to go get that card. A lot of the times it's because I almost sometimes I'm like, maybe I should apply for it. Like if I'm buying a whole thing at like Sephora, Ulta, or even at Walmart, and they're like, 30% off if you apply for it. And I'm like, like 30%, that's $30 off of $100. That's the way I think about it. But if you guys have ever read, all the disclosures that they give you, the interest rate, even if you have a good credit, they're starting them off at like 30%. So do you really get a discount? Not really. Maybe it's just something like right there you get it, but then you have to pay it back because you're using your credit to do that. And it's everywhere. Interest rates are usually high, but a lot of those, they're a lot higher right now. What I would recommend, if any of you ever want to get a credit card, go with an institution because they will give you a lower rate and then you could use it anywhere. Rather than if you get that Sephora card, the Dillard's, even sometimes to buy like school stuff. If you bought a new laptop or anything like that, sometimes it's better for you to get a credit card at an institution that they're going to give you a lower rate and then use that to pay for it. But how much did we say we can use from it? 30%. So keep that in mind all of the time. Only 30% of it. Because that'll help you and that'll help your credit. Because that's the one thing we want, for it to help your credit. Also, if any of you, maybe are iffy on your credit, you don't have the credit that you feel you should have, or they're telling you to work on your credit, the one thing that you all can do is get a secured credit card. So I'm not sure about other institutions. With us, a secured credit card starts off at $500. So basically, whatever time that you have, you can save up the $500. Then you put the $500 on the account. So we hold that money and then we give you a credit card. And it'll help you rebuild your credit and it'll help you get credit. But it's the same thing as a regular credit card. If you're using it, you have to pay it back because that's how it's going to help you. It's going to build that payment history. Because if you don't use it or you don't pay it back on time, it's not going to help you either. So we have that. We have what it's called a credit rebuilder as well, which is the same thing. You put, let's say, $500 in. We hold that money and then give you $500 back, but then you're making payments on a monthly basis until you're done paying it. And that one is different amounts that you could do it. But that's what that does. It helps because you're kind of like, well, why am I going to put money and then they're holding it and then I don't get to do anything with it? It's to build that payment history that you're able to pay on time, that you could keep a loan open for a certain amount of time, pay on time and pay it off. Because if you don't pay it, then, we keep whatever you didn't pay back, but then it still doesn't help you because it won't show that you have a good payment history. Okay, I think we have somebody else that's going to talk to you guys.
Ms. Margie. Hello, you all. Again, yes, my name is Christian Castillo. I'm here, a financial aid specialist for the East Diana campus. I actually take care of the EET program, ISS, and also the PTA program. So most of you guys probably already met with me in regards to your financial aid. But let me ask you, how many of you guys have student loans? Most of you guys, right? Okay, so we know that student loans also have a great impact on your credit report. Even though student loans are not credit-based, meaning that you don't have to have a good credit or credit history to be able to qualify for student loans, they still get reported on your credit report or credit history. So definitely, it does have a great impact on your credit information. So student loans is like any other loan. Again, as we know, as any car loan, mortgage, uh, any other credit cards. They do also have interest rate. So Department of Education, every time they do, every year, they change the interest rates. As we know, everything is going high and high. So every time they increase those interest rates, currently we are at a 6.53%. So it's not that bad, but again, every time it is increasing. So we wanna go ahead and talk about today on how those student loans can impact your credit. As we all know, if you have good payments on your credit, then of course, good credit report will be on your account. But we also have to take care of those student loans payments. As we all know, right now, currently, you are active students, so there's no need for you to start making payments on your account. Department of Education will give you what is called that 6 months of grace period, which means that your first payment will be due 6 months after you graduate from the program. So again, but even though if you want to start making payments, you're welcome to do so. It's going to be even help you, of course, to save on that interest, to of course lower how much you owe by the time that you have to start making payments. So what can happen if you guys, when you have to start making payments, if you miss a payment or stop making payments, what do you think you guys will happen to your credit report? It will drop, right? So definitely that is called basically going into default. So one of the things that we want to avoid on student loans is going into default, because that's when it will be definitely reporting to your credit negative. So going into default, meaning it's stop making payments for a certain, probably one payment, two payments, or in this case, probably in a bunch of payments, missing a bunch of payments. So going into default can definitely affect your credit, and it can affect in different ways. One of the most impacts that can have, it will be on your taxes. Let's say, for example, if you guys get any refunds on your taxes, but you are in default, guess what that refund is gonna go for? Where is it gonna go? To your student loan payment. One other thing as well, your wages can get garnished as well. So your employer, I mean, once you get paid, if you are in default, it might be that your wages can go directly to your loan as well, to be able to pay that off and get that out of default. So definitely, it's very important to make sure that you stay on top of your payments. If you have a situation, I know we know that life happens. If you can't make a payment, if you only have half of it, the most important thing for you to do will be definitely talking to your student loan servicer. So each one of you will be assigned a loan servicer from the Department of Education, and those loan servicers will definitely help you out on doing a different repayment plan, doing what is called a forbearance or deferment, which is placing your loans in pause for a certain period of time. So definitely, again, keeping in communication with your loan servicer will be the most important thing if you guys are going to or are struggling on making payments on your accounts. All right. Now, one of the other things, going into default in your guys' of your federal student loans is that you guys can lose your eligibility for federal student aid. What does that mean? Meaning that if, let's say that you're currently getting some Pell Grants, some student loans, and you past loans go into default, then you may lose those Pell Grants. You may lose to get additional student loans. So very important, again, make sure that you do keep in communication with your loan servicer. They will be the best help that you can get. There are different programs that they're offering. For example, right now, there's a program that is called the FirstLight program. If you have federal student loans in default, you can sign up for that program and you start from fresh. Of course, you need to set up some agreements with them. They're still going to ask for that money, but of course, at the moment, you will start fresh and be eligible to receive more financial aid. Any questions so far? No? All right, perfect. So that's definitely, what I have in regards to federal student loans. in review. Just make sure keeping contact with your loan servicer, making payments to your accounts. If you need to postpone a payment, stop making payments for a certain period of time, communicate with your loan servicer. If you guys don't know who that loan servicer is, we can always help you in our offices. You can always log into studentaid.gov with your username and password that you use for FAFSA, or come to our offices and we can definitely look that information up and give you the account or information about your loan servicer, who that is. All right. Perfect. So that's all for me. Thank you so much.